All right, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's good and awake and alert in life. We have started on time, before time, as per my new policies of starting before time. I hope everybody's good. I have to say that we will have Krishna DK at some stage in the next few episodes. Director of Family Man 2 had to cancel last minute for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes these things happen, my friends, beyond all our controls. So yeah, hello to Kajol Agarwal, hello to Raghav, hello to Kunal Shah and Mithali and everybody who's tuned in. Do give a like so that more people pop in to this particular live. And yeah, just a couple of things. Amarpreet Singh Lamba is very shocked that we've started on time. Hello, not late OP. Early OP is the right term also, which is something you can say. Do give a few likes so that more people tune in. I have Kabir Bedi shortly with me in a couple of minutes. I'll just bring him on. Finished his book, which is called Stories. Wait, I need to figure out how to do this. Stories I must tell the emotional life of an actor. And as you can see, I have 10,000 notes inside this book. You can't see anything because the lights are too bright, but really interesting read. So yeah, if you're interested in Bollywood or just interested in people, you can go pick it up. I'll put the link in the description as well as the pinned comments. How in the world did he come early? I was watching another YouTube video considering you will be 2 minutes late. Yeah, correct. Yash Agarwal says new shirt. Nay, this is an old shirt, man. I don't have money for new. Actually, I have a few new shirts. Also have to announce Vinay Sitapati, who's the author of one of my favorite biographies of an Indian Prime Minister, which is Half Lion. He wrote a book called Half Line, I already said it, which is about PV Narasimha Rao. He's written a new book called Jugal Bandi, which I'm about 100 pages into, which is again really interesting. It's about the relationship between Advani and Vajpayee pre Modi and all of that. Really interesting book. And so Vinay Sitapati plus eminent historian slash quizzer Kumar Varun is going to be there on 15th at 11 a.m. So I'll put the link in the chat right there. So go and set a schedule right now itself. I've realized that we need to start promoting these things a lot more. I don't want to say this. Uh, 7026 Abhinav Das says, I don't want to say this, but Kabir Bedi on the book cover kind of looks like Charles Manson. I will ask him that. Okay, just a couple of things also to mention. A lot of you have been asking me for a really long time, hey, when is stand-up clips coming out? I have news for you. There is a significantly high chance that I will be releasing some stand-up comedy next week, maybe even earlier, which will be on the main channel. So head over there. I'm trying a lot of Instagram reels and all of that. So come support and check it out. And I'm doing small shows at Habitat, properly socially distanced. If you've got a vaccine, if you got the first dose, then the concept of the show is get laughs. No, what is it? Get a shot, whatever. It's a free show, is all I have to tell you. It's happening on 2 p.m. On Monday, I'm doing 20 minutes. And on Wednesday, also, I'm doing 20 minutes. So come pop in and support me trying to record some stand-up comedy. So that'll be on the Indie Habitat page. You can check it out on Instagram. I think there's a number, etc., that you can do. Okay, we have 100 plus people watching, so please give a like so more people tune in. ये टेडी बेयर ने बिंदी क्यों लगाई है? अरे स्टाइल के लिए crack the puzzle. This is the style. Even this doll is wearing. You don't know the gender of the bear? I mean, what is this nonsense? You mean sit down comedy that you did on Zoom, says someone? I don't know. No, the Habitat show was a live actual show. We had about 15 people out of the capacity of the place is 65. I think we had 15 people. So we're keeping it properly social distance, 30% max occupancy. Kajal Agarwal is right. It's get jabbed, get free laughs. That's the show. Super. I'm going to introduce my guest for today. Very excited to have him. As I said, I think he's already here, but I'll give him a proper introduction. I got to get this right. By the way, I'm going to keep looking at my notes, which are on this side, which is on Microsoft Word, because I'm a classy guy. So this is not me dissing the guest. It's just me looking at this. Also, I have to say that if you've never seen the show before, the way it works is I'll ask my guest a bunch of questions. And then at the end, I will take a few super chats, mostly from you. I will also try and take a few normal questions. Okay. He's an Italian superstar. He's starred in Sandokan, which was a big, massive hit in Italy. He was the first Indian to be in a James Bond film, played a villain in there. And he's a knight in Italy. So, Cavalier. Please give it up for Cavalier, Mr. Kabir Bedi. Sir, you can put on your camera now, sir. Sir.
Hi, Sorabh. How are you?
Hi.
Thanks for that lovely introduction. Thanks. Hi.
Very nice to have you here. I have only one question to start off with, which is why did you throw Rekha to the crocodiles in Khoon Bhari Mang? This is the question India wants to know.
Because I love crocodiles, and I know that they're like really juicy sweet meat. So Rekha seemed to fit the bill. It was one of those seminal scenes that everyone remembers me for. It terrified a whole generation of children who saw me in that film and looked at me with fear for decades until they realized that I'm actually quite a good guy and I can do lots of other roles too. But it was one of those iconic moments of Rekha being thrown to the crocodiles that actually made the film a super hit. So I've got a lot to thank that crocodile for.
Yeah, that the crocodile was like one of your most like acting is all about reacting, and that crocodile was a great co-star.
He was.
Everything.
You know, I went on this holiday in Sri Lanka, and we rented a villa. And in the pool of this villa, there was this big rubber crocodile that the owner had left there. And I kept throwing my wife into the pool, hoping she'd be terrified. But of course, she laughed at me as she usually does when I try to terrify her.
By the way, we have a lot of people who are tuning in who are Tele 29, Sunny Tahilyani, and a lot of people are saying, damn, that voice. I think your voice, I don't think we could have two different like voices on a show. Me being this squeaky person who sounds like the grating of a chalkboard, and then you with that beautiful baritone.
Well, I wouldn't put down your voice so badly. I think you have a lovely voice. But I have my voice, for which I can take very little credit because it was a gift from my parents and the gods. But I did do a few things to try and tone it up and make it a little more effective and more resonant, etc. So that's always helped me because I do a lot of commercials and voiceovers and all those things apart from the acting and events. So the voice has always helped. And it fortunately, there's one thing that has been with me. And strangely, you know, I didn't realize the power of my voice early in my career. If you ever see some of my early films, you'll realize that I wasn't really using the power of my voice. I discovered this only as I went along and said, my God, you know, I can make a big difference with this voice. And so I did a little more to think about the voice and voice quality when talking, you know, as well as using it in my acting. So it's been a great asset to me.
Completely. There's a show called Preacher, which is a superhero show. It's about this preacher who gets a voice from, I've forgotten the concept of it, but he can use his voice to just tell people to do anything. So if he says, hey, bend down and slap yourself in the thigh, you will do that. And I think that's the power you have. I think you should start doing this, just walking the streets of Mumbai or wherever you are and just telling random people to do absolutely ridiculous things.
Doesn't work with my wife. Her voice, which is much more higher than mine, tells me what to do. So I'm quite wary about trying my voice on others. But you know, I mean, it is a gift, and I've got to be thankful for it, and it has helped me a lot in my career. I haven't tried telling strangers what to do because, frankly, I think they'll just tell me to mind my own business and get the hell out of there. And I wouldn't blame them.
I think this is a YouTube sketch waiting to happen at some stage. Just Kabir Bedi walking the streets telling random people what to do. Hey, you put that sack over your head and jump into the pool. I mean, see, this is me trying to do your voice, which doesn't work. Anyway,
I'll do it my way. Put that sack over your head and jump into the pool now.
It's done. I want to build a pool in my house just so I can jump into it right now.
Vocal terrorism.
Vocal terrorism is a good concept, yeah. Okay, by the way, we have a lot of somebody earlier said that you look like in the cover of this book, somebody said you look like Charles Manson, which I don't think is at all true.
I absolutely respect his opinion, but as a friend and a well-wisher, I would advise him to have a good eye test.
Okay, so there's a lot in this book. Okay, stories I must tell. I'll be perfectly frank. I started this book very skeptically because I'm like, another book. You know what I'm saying? And I think about 3 chapters in, I was like, oh my God, this is riveting stuff. So the first chapter is, and I'm not revealing too much. It's you interviewing the Beatles, and again, I'm trying to avoid giving any quote unquote spoilers for the book. Then it gets into your relationships, and you're very, very upfront about your relationships, about your anxieties, and all of the rest of that. So the question is, why did you throw yourself into the metaphorical crocodiles and write this book?
There was no other way to do it. I had to dive in. Either I did a kind of sugar-coated story of what a great man I am, what great things I've achieved, what things made India proud, what are the firsts and milestones in my career, and how I weathered Hollywood, how I've done all these wonderful films with superstars. After a while, your eyes start glazing over because unvarnished praise can be extremely boring. And my thought was that, I do have an extraordinary story, a story full of amazing highs and amazing heart-wrenching lows. And my thought was, tell your story, man. People will be interested. And tell it as honestly as you can, as authentically as you can, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Tell it warts and all. If you want to criticize the frailties of others, you must criticize and reveal your own frailties as well. And I've done that because I think that's the only way I could tell a story that resonated for me and I think should resonate for others. Why do people read a book? It's for the emotional experience of reading a book, for having a conversation with somebody who's talking to you honestly or beautifully. And I think I've tried to hit those markers in the way that I wrote the book and the transparency with which I've written it. It's almost like I've tried to bring people into the scenes in my life. Let them experience those emotional dramas. Let them experience those dilemmas that I face, those choices I face, those dangerous moments that can change the course of your life, and sometimes you make wrong choices. So the importance of making right choices, the mistakes I made are all part of my journey. It's part of the fabric of being human, exploring the joy, beauty, pain, pleasure, punishment of being a human being.
Completely agree. I mean, there's a lot that is there to unpack because I'll come to one of the lows actually. I'll just take a couple of comments before that. Devesh Srivastav says Sorabh should ask him about the Beatles interview too. We'll do that. Vignesh Ganesh says he should have voiced Thanos in Hindi Avengers. About your voice, are you an Avengers fan?
I don't follow it actively, but I'm aware of the large cast of characters. Write to the producers, tell them maybe they'll do it next time. I'm ready, willing, and able. That's what I do.
So I'm just going to click the record for future. This thing I'd forgotten to do that. Nothing to worry about. Just now we'll say the recording is started. It's being recorded. There you go. Yeah, that's for future reference. It's nothing. There's no dangers here. Okay, so you spoke about the lows very briefly now, and I think the sort of byline of this book is the emotional life of an actor. And what I wanted to know was that, which I was pretty surprised to find out that I think in the early 2000s, you filed for bankruptcy in the US because a lot of the a few of the investments that you didn't really work out. So like as a freelancer myself, because essentially if you're a performer of any sort, you're just a freelancer. That's essentially your life. So what are the learnings you had from that particular experience? Like, is there something that you want to tell somebody who's say in a job that's not a salaried job? Like any learnings from that particular experience?
Yeah, one, be very careful with your money. You know what happens is when you come from a background, I came from a background where there was very little money. I'm very idealistic parents, but very little money. Culturally very rich, but not rich in the bank. So I had to actually work my way through college. So when you suddenly have enormous success and you have a lot of money, you think this is it, it'll be there forever. And then you get greedy, you want to multiply your money. And I made these, what I thought were very sensible investments, but turned out to be very speculative investments. I bet on the fact that Apple would go up and become a great company. Today, it's the most valuable company in the world. But the fact is, in the stock market, you can be right in the long term, but the short term can kill you dead. Because then Apple went down from a $2 something down to $1 something. It halved. And I'm betting it would rise into the skies because my son, who was a techie, said, in the end, Apple will win. But in the end, it did. But in the short term, I got cleaned out. I invested in Netscape,
yeah.
which had all the promise of Google. and nothing could possibly go wrong. They're at 80% of the browser market. You have to pay to install their app. Who's going to question it? Then Microsoft comes out 2 years later, gives it Explorer away for free. And I thought, there's no way Microsoft can take on these people. They've got 80% market share. In 2 years, Microsoft wiped the floor with Netscape. So things that look like sure-shot investments, don't ever bet more than, no matter how strongly you believe in a stock, never ever bet more than 15 to 20% on a single stock. And even then do it carefully. I'd say 10% should be the limit. And find 10 such stocks. But don't put it all in one basket, because that is, and I've seen it, a recipe for disaster. And be careful with your money. Just because you've come into a lot of money doesn't mean it'll be there forever. And with, the kind of lifestyle you have and the alimonies I had to pay and the education of my son in America, various things, money was going out, but I could handle all that. It was the investments that wiped me out and gave me my worst time. It came at a very emotionally traumatic time as well. So that was one of the real low points to my life in America. And my book is, my book has lots of highs and lows. It is all the thrills and chills of a roller coaster. And that's one of the joys of reading my book, to see how a person navigates a life like that.
Yeah, you actually mentioned and this is not coming from a place of any judgment. It's like you've had 4 marriages, which is and you mentioned alimony right now. Like through the book in my head, like every time anything happened, right? Because I think after a point as a reader, you start literally treating, even if it's nonfiction, you start treating it as somebody else's life's fiction, right? Essentially. And so you almost forget that, hey, this is a real human being you're thinking about, right? So in my head, I was getting so worried for your alimony. I'm like, hey, this is going to be more alimony to pay.
Right. Well, I think my book proves that truth is stranger than fiction, because it is. If you wrote this as fiction, people say, no, this sounds too far-fetched. The person would have such highs and lows in their lives. And I did. But I love fiction, and I love the short story form. And one of the rules that I learned early in writing, when studying about writing and observing the writings of others, was that question an American filmmaker asked: why should you care? Why should the reader care about your protagonist? Now, in a film, you put a star in, so people care about him, and therefore you like to follow what happens to his fortunes. If you didn't put a star in that role, would it still be as interesting? That's the key test. And therefore, I began this book of mine with that chapter on the Beatles, because it showed the kind of grit I had as a young man, paying my way through college, hustling my way to an interview with the Beatles, and all that, the highs and lows that followed that. But then, then when you see me entering my relationship with Pratima or Parveen and other things that happen in my life, you are with me. You understand who this person is who's going through it. And that's the journey I want to take people
on. Sorry, I'm constantly muting myself because there's a lot of people outside my room, so they're talking very loudly. I have instructed the world outside, but nobody listens to me. And I completely agree that the Beatles story was it just came completely out of the blue for me. And again, I don't want to say how that interview happened and what happened in consequence after that. But I read that because I was expecting the actor's journey and the process, and which also is there. But the first chapter just threw me off, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm into this book for a while. Okay, let's take a couple of questions that are popping in, and a couple of super chats that have come in. Again, if you're watching the stream, please do give a like so that more people tune in, because that's how the YouTube algorithms work. Udit Kichi says he's a real hero, not like the current squeaky speaking so-called heroes. Wow, diss to current generation straight away.
No, there's some great actors today. There's some really great actors today. So let's not diss them. I'm glad you think I'm a hero, and I certainly have done some very heroic roles in my time. But there's some great actors today, so I wouldn't put them down.
Agreed. Okay. So we have Bennett Gordon who's given a super chat saying, "Good series of interviews. Thank you so much." Let's take a question which has come from super chat. Again, you can ask your questions on super chat. Aditya Madhuri says, "How was Kabir sir's experience in the Telugu film industry? He was very good in the movie Gautami Putra Satakarni." And I am assuming that I have completely mucked that title up. So you can please correct me with my terrible Telugu. Yeah.
No, you definitely almost got it right, and everyone would understand you. It's Gautami Putra Shatakarani, who was one of the great kings of the Satavahana dynasty, in Andhra, which was played by the great Balakrishna, who was the son of NTR, and I played the opponent, his opposing king, and we had some wonderful shooting experiences together in Morocco, and I enjoyed that completely. I did another film with Balakrishna after that called Paisa Vasool. And next month I'll be doing another great Telugu film called Shakuntalam. So my relationship with the Telugu film industry continues, and I hope to have lots of fun.
Okay, I have a slightly different question to ask you, because in the book you mentioned quite repeatedly that you were not a fan of, at that point, in Bollywood, and I think that still continues to an extent of lip syncing during songs, right? And that sort of you made a decision that I'm not going to be lip syncing in songs, and I think, I don't know if that's one of the reasons why you decided let's try my luck abroad and all of the rest of that. But did you at some stage think that, hey, I should have just sung a few songs, it's not a big deal? Or you were just like, I'm perfectly happy doing exactly what I want?
The position I took was that I'm a dramatic actor. I don't want to do song and dance numbers. Basically, that was a mistake. If you want to be a Bollywood actor, you have to do song and dance numbers. That's part of it's a given. And nobody does song and dance better than Bollywood. We have the best choreographers, the best musicians, the best lyricists. And I really believe that if I wanted to seriously do Bollywood, I should have adopted that, learned it. It's just another craft, another art. And I was wrong in that decision. But by the same token, making that decision is what made me think about having to go abroad. So when the Italian opportunity came, I jumped on it, seized it, and made the most of it. So who knows what was best? If I'd been very successful in Bollywood, maybe I wouldn't have done the Italian role. Maybe I wouldn't have had an Italian career. Maybe I wouldn't have had a Hollywood career. So in this case, things worked out well. But had I chosen to follow Bollywood and not done song and dance, I would have either had to play major villain roles or major supporting roles, but certainly not leading man roles.
Right. So, I mean, and it turned out nice. I mean, you're knighted in Italy. I think that, like, when I was like, wait, what? I would make everybody call me, it's Cavalier, right?
Cavaliere in Italian. Cavalier in English, but Cavaliere in Italian. And that's the equivalent, that's the highest civilian honor. It's the equivalent to being knighted. And that's not just for Sandokan, which got me all the success in Europe. It's really for a lifetime of work that I've done there, in films, in television series, and in promoting India and Italy, and Italy and India. Because I believe there's a lot of commonality between both the Italians and Indians. We all use our hands when we talk. We have this wonderful hospitality. Every region has a different cuisine, and we all love our mothers to a massive extent. We all have sort of societies based on religious beliefs as well, the great religious traditions in our country and in Italy. We all have great sculpture. There's many, many commonalities between us. So promoting India and Italy and India has been part of my life's, I won't say mission, but one of the things that I do. And I think their knighting me is an acknowledgement of my work in film, the iconic character of Sandokan that I played, and all I've done for them. So, but Italy has given me more honor than any other country in the world, and I cannot be more grateful to them in any way than I already am.
So I went to Italy with my parents ages back, and I remember I saw one of the most bizarre sights I've ever seen in my life. There was a dude who had a pizza in front of him. He took olive oil, smeared it all over the pizza, rolled it up, and then ate it like it was a Romali roti wrap. I'm like, this is an absurd thing to watch.
They love their pizzas and they love their olive oil. And some guy probably thought, let's combine it for maximum effect, and had an absolute oral orgasm while eating it.
So okay, I wanted to talk to you about Bollywood in the past because, like, I think while reading a book like this, what happens is that random sentences just stick out, and you're like, wait, what? I think you just briefly mentioned that Parveen Babi signed 30 films at one time. 30 films, which is, and I've heard stories like this. Like, one of my favorite stories is about Andaz Apna Apna, how they wanted, I think, Sunny Deol for the role, and then Govinda happened to be shooting in the lot next door, so they just brought him in, which is an absolutely absurd thing to think of. So I want to know what it was like to be part of that particular industry at that point of time, like, because 30 films, signing on 30 films or whatever, I'm sure for you the number was around there as well. It's a lot. Like, so what is it like back then with how Bollywood was functioning?
This people around the world find it very difficult to understand how Bollywood actors shoot many films at the same time. This whole thing started because of the way films were financed in the past. Distributors were the main source of funding for films, and they didn't want to give all the funding up front because there were cases when producers just took the money and ran away. So they said, we'll give it to you in installments. Show us what you shoot, then we'll give you more. So shooting was always in installments. Now, this created a situation where actors were unemployed in these big gaps between installments. So then they started signing more films. Then not only the actors, the directors started doing it, the cinematographers started doing it, everybody started doing it. And then it just became standard practice. Everybody shoots many films. And the biggest problem that a producer has is how to coordinate the dates of everyone else for the next shoot. Because everyone's doing different films on different schedules. How do you find space for your film? So that was the origin of the system. And of course, Parveen Babi, at the height of her glory, had signed 30 films and 30 big films because Amar Akbar Anthony had been such a massive hit. And the tragedy of Parveen was that at the height of her glory, at the height of signing all these films, she was having the greatest mental problems and was totally alone and fearful of what would happen if the industry completely dumped her, because that's always the biggest fear and the stigma attached to mental illness. And this was exactly what happened in the end. It became uncontrollable, and the industry essentially abandoned her, or she abandoned them. But that was the way Bollywood operated in those days. Many films at the same time for everyone in the industry.
I mean, you touch upon something which is obviously like been a tough thing to, and I think you mentioned it in the book as well, and your interviews. That was the two toughest chapters you had to write with, which is dealing with people around you that have a mental illness, which is, I think, a couple of instances in your life. What I want to know is that, do you think things have changed like now? Like, for example, I had a friend of mine who I was calling her for one of the lives, and she said, "Hey, I'm taking a mental health week." And I'm like, dude, great. I'm very happy that you're taking a mental health week, because I think we can be upfront about saying that I need a break. I'm like, that's perfectly fine. So do you think that things have changed for the better now versus then? And also, because I think you mentioned briefly that there was somebody who said that she's cracked or whatever it is, and all of those terms and words thrown around without, I think, people realizing what it meant even then. So do you think do you think the way people dealt with it around her and around your son as well? I mean, I think you guys dealt with it perfectly well, but I think let's talk about Parveen Babi and the industry. Have things changed then and now?
I think today the medicines to control and manage such conditions are much better. So there is a definite advantage in that. I think today there is a greater awareness that, mental health issues have to be seen with greater compassion. The stigma hasn't completely gone, but there is more tolerance today and less kind of blindly, that kind of dismissiveness and that kind of putting people with mental problems down. But it continues to be a problem, because really people can understand physical illnesses far easier than mental illnesses. And they would rather not talk about it or deal with it if it's not their problem, because they don't understand it. And so the stigma is both for the person who's afflicted and even for the caregiver. And in some senses, the caregivers really need as much sympathy as the afflicted, because they give up so much to care for the afflicted.
Yeah, I mean, which is what I wanted to talk to you very quickly about, which is that I think I don't know, this seems to be the trend that in any like sort of extended family, like I mean, there's been situations in my life that you've had to deal with a situation like that. I want to know what is it, because I don't think people focus on people having to deal with people having mental illnesses. So the question is that, a, where do you find the strength from, and where and what is the approach that, like, what are your learnings from having to deal with that so up close?
So let me just say that when Parveen left me in London, came in, the circumstance of why she left me and how we went abroad to settle down and why she chose to come back, all this is in my book. But when she came back and then she was starting to have these mental problems, I suffered greatly as well, because the press wrote terrible things about me. That Parveen Babi cracked up because her relationship with Kabir Bedi ended and she was absolutely rudderless and lived in a vacuum and become a zombie. And I was the cause of it. I knew I wasn't, because of all the reasons I've shared in my book and what was happening to her. But the fact is, she suffered, I suffered. But I let her, I didn't contradict the narrative at the time, because I wanted her to resurrect her career. I spoke about it much later. This kind of stigmatization goes on even today. And I wish it was lessened in some way and people were more compassionate and understanding with those who suffer this, because there are physical illnesses and there are mental illnesses. And physical illnesses can be cured, mental illnesses can also be cured, or at least managed very effectively today. So it's not a story without hope, and I think people should believe more and be more compassionate in what the possible outcomes of such situations are.
Agreed. I think, I mean, it's always interesting for me to sort of listen to somebody who was vilified at some stage, even if for a sort of brief few months or whatever it was. And then I think at back then there was no opportunity to even express yourself, saying that, hey, listen, this is my point of view. I think now with social media, you can literally, a story breaks
Yes,
out today and you can
yes.
immediately correct it, which back then you had to wait months and years to get a clarification out.
Yes. No, fact is, actually, sort of, I could have contradicted that
Right.
narrative. I could have contradicted the narrative, but then it would have made, it would have, in some ways, made things worse for Parveen.
Yeah.
So, no, she cracked up on her own, let people think it was emotional things. She'll get over it. I set the record straight in my book, because I always said, ultimately, truth will out. Truth didn't out. So I had to say, this is my truth and this is what happened to me. And this is exactly how that whole thing unfolded and everything that I went through. Because there was this strange parallel between my extreme success in Europe and her extreme mood swings and mental problems that were happening. And so it was a double experience as I was going through, of euphoria because of my success, and of deep sadness and angst and anxiety because of all that was happening emotionally. This makes for writing great drama, but to live through it is not easy. And I share that experience with my readers.
It's so interesting. I was talking to someone who, a slightly young person who was going through a mental health thing, and it was so bizarre what he said to me. It's about like early 30s guy, and all he said to me was, he's like, "I would just want to get married." I'm like, "That's not going to solve your problem." But it was so interesting that essentially it all boils down to not only compassion in your direction was and love and all the rest of that, but it's also, I think sometimes people expect it on terms that are not necessarily possible in reality.
When somebody says something like that, at one level you can laugh at them and say, hey, that might make your problems
Yeah,
worse,
yeah,
But the fact is, it's a cry for help.
yeah.
It's somebody saying, I want somebody in my life who loves me, who cares for me, who nurtures me. That's what the person's really saying. So it's very cruel to diss them and make marital jokes at their expense. But the
Correct.
fact is, it is a cry for help which should be heard and respected.
Completely agree. I mean, that's what I did. I just to clarify before somebody says, Sorabh, why did you diss him? I didn't diss him. Okay. Again, please do give a like. Let's get this up to 300 plus likes. And yeah, people are still amazed by the voice and all the rest of that. I wanted to know, because I think you mentioned quite a lot in the book, and that seems like it's something that I've been trying to understand, because about breaking into Hollywood, right? Like, so even Ben Kingsley had to essentially change his name to be palatable, as like an easier name. I've forgotten what his real name was.
His name was Krishna Bhaji, and he
Yeah.
came from a Gujarati family that had moved to Zanzibar before moving to England. He graduated of the Royal Shakespeare Company. And when you go for auditions, people say, we'll get back to you. I said, the minute I changed my name to Ben Kingsley, people say, when can you start? So it was a quantum leap in people's attitudes to him when he changed his name from Krishna Bhaji to Ben Kingsley.
So, because I often like, and you said that there were not enough roles written for you as an Indian actor back then.
Yes.
You just had to, because even in Bold and the Beautiful, you played a
Moroccan prince.
Moroccan
prince, yeah.
Yeah. So one part of me is trying to understand this from a sort of financial POV, because when you actually think of the Indian American population, it's actually not as much as I mean, they're very contributing bunch of people, but it's probably about 2% as far as I understand, about 1.8 to 2%.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah. And back then it was probably less. So do you think that was a financial thing, or do you think it was like what is the reason? Because I think things have changed. So again, this is a many part question.
Well, things have changed because firstly, diversity has become an issue. People are now talking diversity, thinking diversity, writing diversity in roles. Also, the world has changed. So it's no longer that Hollywood's soap operas are just seen in America. They're seen internationally. And Hollywood films have always been seen internationally, but suddenly they realize the importance of the Indian market, the Chinese market, the Japanese market. So these characters are being written. And so my journey in Hollywood was really trying to get roles, but they weren't writing roles for Indians. So my thing was, okay, I'll play foreign roles. Give me foreign roles. And most of the roles I played in Hollywood were foreigners other than Indians. It was only in the James Bond film that they actually cast me correctly as a Punjabi Sikh. Therefore, it was an extra thrill for me. And then an extra thrill to come to India and shoot at this wonderful Lake Palace Hotel in Udaipur. That was a real high as well, one of the other highs in my life. The feeling of being in this incredible franchise of Bond films, which the whole world goes to see for guns, glamour, girls, gadgets, and classy entertainment. That is the promise of Bond films. And they have hundreds of millions of followers around the world. So they become your fans as well. So that was a real high. But, I lived in Hollywood for almost 20 odd years. And how I survived that journey and how an Indian in Hollywood survives that journey is part of my book. And I think it'll be very interesting for people that want to make that journey to read it. It was certainly harder in my days because they weren't writing roles for Indians. It's easier today because they are writing roles for Indians, but it is not an easy journey. Acting is a very tricky business, and trying to climb the road to stardom is a very slippery slope. And if you're doing it as an ethnic minority, it is even harder. So don't be under delusions because diversity is an issue today. It's going to be easy peasy to walk into Hollywood. It's not. But the chances are a lot better if you do.
I think the chances are better. And yeah, I mean, the diversity, I think, is something which a lot of current Indian directors have also been talking about in Indian films, and completely on board with that. I think quite a few of them have spoken about it, which is great. I got to tell you a story. So my grandma, my dadi ji, okay, so she used to when satellite television had exploded in India, and we had started making all these soap operas, like the Hindi soap operas, etc., etc. She used to ignore those, and she was obsessed with Bold and the Beautiful. And she didn't speak a word of English, so she just used to understand all of it. And I think when you came in, I think she just looked at me and said, "Ye to Kabir Bedi hai."
Yeah.
So my Dadiji was a big fan of your work on Bold and the Beautiful. What I would love to know is that how did it happen? How did Bold and the Beautiful and Bond happen? Like, because as you said, I think the audition process must have been the same. Was it because Sandokan and all the rest that happened, or was it
Yeah.
yeah? I would just love to know how you landed those roles.
The Bond film certainly happened because of my success in Europe with Sandokan, because I'd become such a big star. And the Bond in Europe. And the Bond films are always looking to expand their market. The Bond films are the earliest people to want to internationalize their films through their cast as well. So they wanted the role of an Indian, and hey, you had a ready-made Indian who was already a star in Europe, so hello, bring him on. And I think I got it because of that. The Bold and Beautiful happened in a more complex kind of way. There was a film that the Italians were shooting in India, a miniseries called The Maharaja's Daughter. And I was playing the Maharaja, and they cast Hunter Tylo from The Bold and Beautiful as the lead role in The Maharaja's Daughter. So Hunter Tylo and I worked together in this miniseries. The producers of The Bold and Beautiful saw the miniseries in Los Angeles, liked what I did, liked me, and then cast me opposite Hunter Tylo in The Bold and Beautiful. And Hunter Tylo was one of those extraordinarily beautiful actresses who was on the People magazine's list of 50 most beautiful women in America for 2 years running. And she was a very talented actress too. So it was wonderful to be working with her and on The Bold and Beautiful, which is watched in 143 countries by 1 billion people. So to be on there for a year gives you a massive worldwide fan base.
So there's a story of James Franco, and what he said was, I think he worked on some soap. I don't know if it was General Hospital. I forgot the name. And he said that it literally what would happen is that they would show up like on the day and just give you 18 pages and go like, hey, you got to do this right now. And so that, he said, helped him as an actor in general, because he had gotten so used to just like read the thing and do it immediately over weeks and weeks. Is that how it worked?
It's very interesting you asked this, Sorabh, because I really think the hardest form of acting is acting in a daily series, because you're turning out half an hour a day. That's 2.5 hours a week. That's like more than a feature film a week. And people who've been working on the series know each other, they can know their characters, they know the interrelationships, etc. When you are parachuted into a series, suddenly you're given this half-hour script and you're told to learn it by tomorrow. And they seem to have photographic memories. And I would be up to 2 a.m. trying to learn my lines. And then it's not as though they shoot the way the script is written. They'll shoot according to what's convenient. So if the sitting room set is lit up, they'll shoot all the sitting room scenes there. So if you have 5 scenes in the episode and all 5 are in the sitting room, your scenes will be there one after another, and they will not give you hardly any time between the scenes to learn your lines. And this causes massive stress, and you really have to be very good at memorizing lines. Because in these things, they don't do it shot by shot. There's multiple camera shoots, right? 5 cameras shooting you. And they're editing as you act. So as you're acting, in the control room is saying, cut to camera 3, cut to camera 2, cut to camera 1. So if you mess up or forget a line, they have to roll back and start the whole scene all over again. So they lose a lot of time if you mess up lines. And if you mess up too much, then at the end of the day, if you go overtime, over 6 p.m., not just the cast and then the technicians, the whole building goes into overtime. The producers cost the producer a fortune. You do that once too often, they will write you out. They will replace you with the parrot if they have to, but they will replace you.
That's a lot of pressure though, as an actor, as a performer.
It is the hardest form of acting, physically and mentally demanding, because you have to remember so much, and you're on the floor, on your feet constantly from the time you come in and start rehearsals. And you sit down briefly for makeup and lunch, and then you're on. And you better be fully there, mentally, physically, knowing your moves, knowing your points where you have to move to, knowing your lines, knowing the interrelationships and the emotions between the characters, and deliver every day, every single day. So it is an enormous test of your craft as an actor.
I've forgotten this. Actually, I shouldn't probably name this person. Who's an actor in one of the soap operas in India, and he told me he's like exactly this. He said this is endless. It's just back to back to back, and it's like you have 16-hour shoots and all of that insanity. And he said that I worked on it for 2 years as a lead. I made all the money I needed from acting, and I'm done. He's like,
Right.
I've financed myself for the rest. And then he told me something very, very bizarre, where he said, the amount of sort of intercaste, like within the caste sort of relationships that are happening is crazy because nobody has time to meet anybody outside.
I
Was
can
that?
imagine. I
Yeah,
can imagine. But fortunately, Bold and Beautiful was not 16 hours a day. They worked
yeah,
10 hours a day. And like I said, at 6, you leave the studio. And if you cause overtime, you are in trouble because it costs the producers far too much to pay everyone that overtime. So that's a saving grace, but still doesn't help. By 6, you get home. By 7, you bathe, change, you have your dinner, and then you spend the rest of the night learning lines the next day.
yeah, yeah.
It's a non-stop machine that you're on. It's terrifying at times because you're so afraid of failing, or it's human to forget things, and they'll forgive a few of those infractions, but not too many. So yes, there is huge pressure. But I must say, I enjoyed that time on Bold and Beautiful greatly. I was wonderful actors, and I certainly admired all the fan mail I got from around the world, and being recognized on the streets of Morocco, being recognized on the streets of all kinds of countries that I went to because of the Bold and Beautiful. So that was the real high. That was a real
Yeah,
high.
I
Many
can
highs and
completely.
lows, thrills of it,
Yeah.
and chills of a roller coaster is my book, ups and downs, um, and all that comes with it. And I've tried to tell it from not just from the point of view of events, but tell it in terms of what I emotionally went through. So my book, I hope, becomes an emotional experience to read.
It was. And again, I'll be putting the link in the description as well as the pinned comment afterwards. So anybody interested, you can go check it out. And I would suggest please read it. We'll take two more questions and then we're done. I wanted to ask you because you mentioned quite a lot in the book about how you are a big fan of the news. And I think sometimes you used to say that you used to go for parties where everybody's just talking about Bollywood and they're talking about like this actor did this and blah blah blah. And you're like, hey, let's talk about the news. So what I want to know is what is happening in the world right now that sort of really has your interest, or is something that you've been sort of following as a news story quite aggressively or with interest?
Well, I think certainly the pandemic has to be the top of the list because this is a pandemic that's changed our lives completely. We've lost a world we know. We've lost loved ones. It's affected every country in every way. People have lost jobs around the world. It's creating a whole new society. So that particular thing interests me. The other thing that worries me greatly is the rise of China, and not
Right.
just versus India, but their ability to take over countries, developed countries in Africa, in Asia, and the facilities that they own, even in the developed world, and their capacity of cyber warfare. I am deeply worried by the rise of China because I think it poses the greatest threat to world peace, not just to India. India, for them, is just one of the theaters of war that they're engaged in. There was the hot wars of the First World War and Second World War, then there was a Cold War, and now there is a stealth war going on, a stealth war by China on the world to get world hegemony through a stealth war. They don't need to indulge in a hot war because they're winning the stealth war. And that is what worries me greatly.
So I spoke to this gentleman called Anand Krishnan, who is a China correspondent for India, one of only seven China correspondents for India, which even he finds absolutely absurd. And yeah, his book is great, and it's about essentially about what we keep hearing, which is that hey, they'll say hey, we'll build a port for you, and a country's like, of course we'll take a loan, and then they say hey, now you have to give us the money back, and they're like, sorry, you won the money back, and China's like,
Right,
listen, if you can't give the money back, we'll sign a 99-year lease,
right.
which is
Yeah.
something that they borrowed from the British,
That's
which
what they've
is
done in Sri Lanka,
yeah,
basically. They've done that
yeah,
in
in
Sri
Sri
Lanka, and
Lanka,
they're doing in other places around the world.
yeah,
But it's not just sports. I mean, they sign these. They'll tell a country will build all your dams and roads in Africa. In return, give us mineral rights for the next 99 years, and they put a lock on a lot of the essential minerals that the world needs. So don't want to get into big political, socio-economic discussion out here. But you asked me what concerns me on
yeah,
the news. That concerns me. And of course, the Euro final between Italy and England tonight on Sunday night concerns me. The Copa America between Argentina and Brazil concerns me, which is at 5:30 tomorrow morning. Those kind of things also concern me. But I feel that what I think about most is what kind of world is going to emerge from what we're going through. Because at times of transition, this kind of chaos always happens, and a whole new world is emerging. And as Darwin said, it's not the species that survives is not the strongest or even the most intelligent. It's the one that adapts. And we're going to have to adapt to a whole new world that is coming around us. And, actually, I've spent my whole life adapting because I've changed so many professions from broadcasting to advertising to theater to, Bollywood actor to abroad now an author, various things. I've reinvented myself. And that's what all of us have to do when the world changes. We have to reinvent ourselves in some ways. And how I've done that in my life, certainly I've shared my book.
Completely agree. So I'll just take these last this thing, and we'll take our last question. Nehal Arif Abasi says, "For the man who crushed a pair of dice to dust in his bare hand in front of 007, love you, Kabir sir."
Oh, bless you, bless you. I'll crush any number of dice for you to show you how much I love you.
See, this is a new thing. You said adaptability. This is the new next level of Kabir Bedi's career. Just him crushing random things in front of people who like your work. It's great.
Show them how much I love them.
We also have Rahul Kaul Vakil, who says Indian Morgan Freeman, because I think because of the voice, people are amazed by your voice. Completely get that. Okay, this is the last question that I have. And by the way, your career has been fascinating. It's been absolutely fascinating because you started off in All India Radio, you joined advertising, then you became an actor, then you were in Bollywood. No, first you became a model, then you became an actor, then you landed up in Italy, then you landed up in Bold and the Beautiful, it's a lot of things you've done.
I know. Many lives in one lifetime. Yeah. And I've tried to share that journey as interesting as I could. And it seems to have touched a lot of people, and a lot of people have got a lot out of the book, and I hope those that read it will get different things for different reasons from my book, because there's also the philosophical side of my book. There's also the part of the book that talks about my parents and their legacy and the Indian freedom struggle and Sikhism and Buddhism and philosophical inquiries and all kinds of other things in the book. But so I think there's different strokes for different folks. Everyone will get what they want out of the book, and I hope it's more than value for money. But I hope, above all, that they take the trouble to go out and buy it, because getting people to buy a book is a huge problem today. I saw this wonderful cartoon the other day of a guy reading the book, and this girl is saying to him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm reading a book to see if I can still do it." I think that's true of so many people, because there's so many distractions of social media and streaming sites and news on your mobile and all the other distractions of social media, etc. So we're all time challenged, and it's almost a problem to read a book, to find time to read a book. But reading a book is like having a conversation with a great mind. It's having it's having a wonderful journey into a world you didn't know about before, which is fascinating. And I hope my book is that, because I really would like people to read it and take the trouble of buying it and actually taking the risk and making the time to read it. But I tell you I do promise you one thing. If you start reading my book, you won't stop. You won't stop.
Yeah, I finished it. I finished it in like 4 days.
So wow, thank you.
I wrapped it up. I was like, I'm telling you, the Beatles chapter, and then I think you were so upfront about your relationships, which I was like, does this man have nothing to lose? It was great. It was like because I think we to find honesty about people's lives, and especially the private details of your lives, is still a relatively rare commodity. So I keep telling people to read, so people should go ahead and read. By the way, Nitant Gaikwad says we need a Kabir Bedi biopic. I completely agree. While reading the book itself, I was like, there's about 4 facets that you can do. Okay, this is the last question I wanted to ask you, which is that since 1982, you've been a voting member at the Oscars.
Right.
And I want to know, because I think from the outside, we don't really understand how it's done, right? Because there is absolutely no conceivable way every single one of the voting members is going to be able to watch all of these films and all of that. So, can you just shed some light, if you can, on how this entire process works and what it's like?
Yes. Firstly, you just can't get into the academy. You have to be invited by the academy to join.
Yeah.
And you have to then be nominated by two members who are already members, and then you get inducted. So I've been a member since 82. The way it works is this. All the films that are eligible out there, a sort of master list is prepared. In the first round, actors nominate actors, writers nominate writers, directors nominate directors, cinematographers nominate cinematographers. Each one nominates their own profession. Then you come to the nomination stage. At the nomination stage, everyone votes for all the categories. And in the initial stage, when everyone's voting for their own profession, everyone still votes for what they think should be Best Picture. And at the nomination stage, they've actually changed the format a little. Now you sort of put down your order of preferences, and then they tally the order of preferences, and by some algorithms they work out which is the most popular film that will get the actual Oscar. But it is, I must say, a very transparent process. There's enormous integrity. There's no corruption involved with it. Of course, they will try and influence you by ads in the trade papers for your consideration, so and so for acting, so and so for directing, etc. They will hold screenings so you can see their films, and Hollywood studios invest anywhere from $500,000 to from $250,000 to $500,000 to promote Oscar potential films, because each Oscar is worth $25 million to them in terms of revenue, in terms of theatrical.
This is something that's been like they've figured this out, that this is the actual.
They figured this out. If you get an Oscar, the advertising value of that gets you $25 million more in revenue worldwide. So they're not afraid of investing $500,000 to try and get an Oscar, because they can write off that amount against their profits. And if they win it, then it adds to their profits.
So what about when they have the best foreign film, right? Because it seems like that's 219 countries or whatever the number is to go through, and especially you have to watch whatever. I think India has one official entry, etc., etc. Do you actually get the chance to be able to watch all of the films, or is it like, hey, let's watch the best?
So in the foreign film category, what happens is there's a list of foreign films that are deemed eligible, and you have to commit to seeing all the films, right? So if you are among those, so not every member is able to see all the films, so they don't opt to be a voter. Earlier, we used to get screeners sent to our house. Now we can also go on digitally and go on. But you have to commit that I will see these films, and they know what films you've seen, because they've digitally marked everything. So all the people that have watched the films and then vote, then decide who is the winner of the best foreign film category.
Oh wow, that's that's intense. That sounds
intense.
Like a lot of work, yeah.
And the best foreign film category is a very strange category, because you get all kinds of films from around the world. 75% of the films that have won the best Oscar for foreign films are European.
Yeah.
Africa probably has one or two, Asia probably has 3 or 4. It's very rarely that a best film comes from a non-European country. And also, the voters in the Oscars are largely white, largely over 60, largely prejudiced towards more human stories. And those are the films that tend to win the Oscars. So when we submit an entry for the Oscar, it's important to bear those factors in mind. Because in a beauty contest, the girl who wins isn't the girl you think should win, it's the one who the judges think should win. So you have to know the minds of the judges when submitting a film for the best foreign actor category.
I like how a lot of Indian films are now going to start researching 60-year-old white men and see, hey, what is your taste?
That's right.
We need to figure out your Netflix recommendations to see how we can win the Oscars.
That's right.
but that's truly insightful. I really appreciate the time you've taken out, Mr. Bedi. Again, the book is called Stories I Must Tell. Again, I'm going to reduce the lighting here so you can see the cover. Stories I Must Tell, the emotional life of wait, what is it?
Let me
I don't
show
know how
it
to
to you
read
also
emotional
equally
life of an
clearly.
idea. Yeah, there you
There
go.
you
So
go. There you go.
I'll put the link in the pinned comments as well as the description. Go out and buy it and support it. It's great fun. Anything else you'd like to say before leaving? Anything you'd like to plug? Any place you want people to follow you or anything at all?
Well, I'm on social media, I Kabir Bedi on all the forums. I thank you so much, Sorabh, for having me on your show and giving me access to all your cool and wonderful audience and your own very cool and wonderful persona. So thank you for that. And I really, I'm delighted to be able to be here and talk about my book and about other things in life in general.
You know what? I have to do this. I have to be exploitative now because that this voice
Okay,
is incredible. So
go
can
on
you
then.
just say because I might just use this in a voiceover in future.
All right.
Subscribe to Sorabh's channel. It's the greatest channel on earth.
Subscribe to Sorabh's channel. It's the greatest channel on earth.
This
There
is
you go.
perfect.
Use it all you like. Exploit me all you like. I'll do anything for a friend. As you notice in my book, I never forget people who help me, and I always support
Yeah.
them.
It's absolutely again really, really thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Really wish you all the best for the book. I know you have a lot of interviews and all lined up. You can switch off your camera. Thanks a lot. Please do give a like for Mr. Bedi and do tweet to him and all the rest. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you
I
so
just
much. Bye now.
I just have a few goodbyes to tell, so I will do that. All right, Kajol says it was an amazing stream. Vamsi Kiran says, Saurabh, you deserve to have a late night show. This is the late night show, man. It's all good. If Kabir, Neil Sen says if Kabir sir's biopic is made today, you asked a question. Sorry, I should have taken that. Super. So that was a very interesting conversation. Like I genuinely enjoyed it. And again, I will put the link. As I said, lots of fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks. On 15th, we have very eminent historian Kumar Varun popping in, along with Vinay Sitapati, who's written a book called Half Lion, which is about PV Narasimha Rao, as well as Jugal Bandi, which I'm currently about 150 pages into, which is about the relationship between Advani and Vajpayee, which honestly, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I did not know this at all. So the link for that is right here in the comments. 15th KV plus Vinay Sitapati. It's going to be another one of those awesome political / historic streams. So History Premies is back. It's right there. So please do set a schedule for that and all of that. And again, I'm going to be in Habitat on Monday and Wednesday. If you've got jabbed, then it's a free show for you. So come and see that. Lots to see there as well. Pratima Agarwal says, "What a stream and wonderful stories." Read the book. I'm not. I don't know. I'm plugging the book so much, but yeah, please go ahead. And I'm going to use that VOA in a future stream. Like 150%, this is going to happen. And if you see it in a future stream, please point it out. You have to point it out. That's about it. I don't think I have anything else to plug. Oh yeah, I'm also going to be doing like I did with Azim. I'm going to do a live YouTube session at Habitat itself in front of a human being. So if there are any comedians specifically in Mumbai who you'd like to have me talk to, let me know and I will try and get them and do it next Saturday. This has been fun. I really appreciate all of you tuning in. As Shekhar, this is so fun. And again, if you liked it, do go and tell Kabir and all the rest of that stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all my mods, Kajol, Raghav, Dhanush, who else is there? Is Sharanya there? I'm sure she was. And to everybody